topic is Turning Red, the movie. There's a whole lot
of done with that one. Don't post that last topic. We didn't finish that one.
There's a whole lot of controversy around this movie.
I just got done watching it.
Yeah.
Attention because I'm on here, but I was just watching it.
I enjoyed it.
So
I liked it. I thought it was good.
So wait a minute. Who didn't we start? We haven't started with you.
B Mike. We haven't started with B Mike.
B Mike, start us off.
I brought this.
You got 2 minutes. You got 2 minutes.
All right. So Turning Red. I thought Turning Red was great. I thought it was funny and all right. I have some issues with the continuity, but other than that, the overall storyline about addressing feminism and women empowerment and the taboo topic of periods, because for a long time they didn't talk about that. That wasn't a thing we talked about, and now there's a whole animated film that is going along with the puberty, becoming a woman, and the turning red. I mean, they have the red fox. And that's, of course, symbolism and everything for the period thing. At least in the first half of the movie. Second half turned to something else. But the first half is about that. And I'm like, okay, we are addressing a topic that used to be a very sheltered, taboo thing. I mean, think about this. As a kid, we would watch commercials. You have commercials about pads. And I'm like, as a kid, I'm thinking, who wants to hell suck up a bunch of like blue liquid? Who's doing this? What are these commercials for? They didn't want to use even the color red to symbolize blood or the whole thing. It wasn't even a thing. So now, to me, having a movie that is addressing this topic, even if it's a metaphor, opens up the discussion about this, the transition of girl to woman and the whole process of whether it's prepubescence and puberty and all that stuff. So I think it was a great movie on a deeper level, as well as the comedic, dialogue and even the whole thing. So I'm gonna throw it out to y'all. Like, I thought it was a great thing. I don't think it should be controversial. I don't think it's too blatant with the message. I don't think it's something that kids should be sheltered from. It's not a thing to me, but for some parents they feel it's too much.
All right. Leash, what's up? What you think?
I literally just got done watching it with Audrey. I mean, I wasn't paying attention all the way just because I was on here, which also like I missed the last. We've been on here for how long? However long we've been on here.
Almost an hour.
Yeah, I missed the last portion of that with her. But I watched the beginning part of it. She liked it. She's 5. I didn't see anything wrong with it. She enjoyed it. She thought it was funny. She loves red pandas though. My kid loves animals. So like when the red panda came up, she loved it. Now, does she know the whole thing behind it? No. It was funny. It was nice. I mean, it's a cartoon, but as she gets older, I mean, she'll understand it more. But I don't see a problem with it. Just me though.
Okay. It's okay.
I can tell you the ending if you want.
It's okay. 2 minutes.
I mean, listen. I've been in entertainment like a bunch of you have as well, and artistry of all levels. I feel like the movie's great. I loved it. I found nothing wrong with it. I think it's appropriate all the way through. Even the rebellious side of it. I mean, I think that every teenage, adolescent individual goes through it. So, you're going to rebel. So her doing that, that's on.
Vanessa Huxtable.
But my thing is I think the more shocking part when looking at it is the fact that the American audience receives it the way they do. We are so sheltered compared to the rest of the world. This isn't a taboo topic everywhere else. It's taboo because we're fucking too scared to have real conversations about shit. This isn't new. Yeah, I mean, we hide it, but like we talked about earlier, we can let a kid choose a gender, but a period is shocking. Make it make sense. You sound dumb.
It doesn't.
It does. You sound dumb. If you can choose a gender but can't talk about what comes with a gender, you're dumb, because that means you're not making an informed decision, are you? Because you don't know what real women go through or real individuals go through with their bodies. So you can't make a damn decision if you're not informed. So yes, we are so afraid to have honest dialogue with our kids at appropriate times. I think that this movie is amazing for teenagers transitioning, because it gives you insight into the changing nature of yourself. And it's okay to have those conversations when you're irritable. Mom, it's puberty. You're going through it. Hey, you
10
snap.
seconds.
You're we're not going to go for that. I get your hormones are jumping, but respect is still respect. But it has that ability to dialogue it. But we do it because we don't choose to be as open and transparent here in this country. That's all shocking to people.
Embrace it.
Right.
All right. So I'm gonna I have mixed feelings about it. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. There are things that I really liked about it. I'll start there. I like that it talked about the mother-daughter dynamic. That needs to be discussed. I think that deals with a lot of families, because mothers are teaching daughters how to be women. So there comes a lot of conflict that comes with that. It talks about hormones, and I think that that's a good thing. I think that's really cool, something nice to address, because all kids are going through that. It discusses intergenerational trauma, which I think a lot of brand new movies are touching on. And I think that's pretty cool to display. And it's kind of like a coming of age, coming of rights story. Now, on to the negative type stuff. I think that there are some things in the movie that are a little problematic. I wouldn't go as far as saying that it is not for kids. I won't say that. But I don't think it's for all kids. I don't think it's for certain, like for kids who, okay, so there's a running theme in the media right now of coming out. So rebelling against, a little bit of rebelliousness, obviously we see that in movies all the time for children.
Yeah.
In this particular movie, it was a little further. And this particular movie is a little further with the rebelliousness, I think, and with if the movie starts right away with, if you listen to your parents, you'll lose yourself. And then I think there's an ongoing theme of following your inner beast, not listening, and making the mother the villain. And so I don't think that every parent is going to be okay with their kid watching it. And I'm okay with that. And I see why, because I think there's some problematic themes in it, but there's some great themes in it as well that I do like. And I wouldn't go as far as saying it's just not for kids. I wouldn't go that far.
I'll say,
and I didn't get to finish everything on the negative side, but
go ahead.
My 2 minutes are up, so y'all can feel free to chime in as y'all like.
All right, one, I want to say that, this whole rebellious thing, it's not new. Like even in the 50s with Reefer Madness and rebellion against the parents, and that's not a new thing at all.
Teenagers do.
To me, this was mild compared to some other rebellious movies that are out there.
Right.
Especially in the 80s. The 80s went hard with teenagers.
Anybody watch Finding
But
Nemo?
that's why I say that I don't think that it's...
he touched the butt. Nino touched the butt.
That's why I said that it's not for all kids. Some kids that's a little older that aren't as impressionable. I think it's a movie for preteens. I don't think it's for... Now, Audrey's age, she don't know what's going on. She see a red panda. She says animal. But like in that middle zone where they do know what's going on, I think for some kids, you got to be mindful, especially if you're particular about what they watch. if you are the type of parent who, because I grew up in a family who is very particular about when they introduce certain things to you and when they don't. If you are that type of parent, you're not gonna want your kid. It's possible that you might not want your kid to watch this right away. And that's how I feel about it. And I don't think anything's wrong with that.
I mean, I'll also say this though, and I want you to really think before you respond, everybody. Think about Disney and Pixar for a second, because you referenced the mom being the villain. You don't think the mom should be the villain. How many strong dad leads are in any given Disney or Pixar movie? If you even think back to Aladdin, the Sultan was an idiot. You think back to...
He was benevolent.
He wasn't a dad, though.
He wasn't.
He was a dad. He was Jasmine's dad.
He was trusting.
Oh, I'm thinking of Jafar.
No, I'm saying think about all the Disney movies. Where have you seen an actual strong father be a father?
Little Mermaid.
Lion King.
Mufasa got taken out.
So what?
He
He's
was
still
there,
a
though.
strong presence who never left.
And so was Ariel's dad.
Listen, well, no, she rebelled against him though, heavy.
But he was
Because
a
at
strong
the end
dad,
of it,
though.
no,
He wasn't
because
an
at the
And he was a good dad.
He was, but she still bounced out the water. I'm saying, but overall, really look at the scope of it and take into account the Princess and the Frog, even how that goes as a cultural movie and how you see them disown Naveed because he didn't marry this person, he didn't do this. And at the end, Tiana is not a princess. She was still serving the white people at the end of the movie, even though she owned her restaurant. She's not a princess. Watch the context. When we look at Turning Red, the rebellious nature of it, you didn't have a strong father. You did have an overbearing mother and grandmother and aunties who, when
Which
they
is
came
the
in,
thing. I'm not saying I hate it.
Yeah.
no,
I'm not saying I hate that. I'm saying
what I'm saying though is it's a running theme throughout their filmmaking. There are no men who balance it to say it's a give and take. It's always these stronger women, and you'll get 3 strong male characters, but you're not getting it overall because their word is always overthrown. Like the queen will be like, I know your father said that, but we're going to do this. So in this, you have the mom who put the fear in the daughter, but the daughter couldn't even talk to the dad. The dad was oblivious to everything, and he shut up.
Well, no, he wasn't oblivious.
He knew what happened, but he didn't take charge of anything.
No, because he knew it wasn't that serious.
Um,
His daughter wanted to go to a concert. The mom blew it out of proportion, and the dad was like
and he didn't stand up to the mom and say, "Come on, she's growing up. Weren't you a kid?"
He discussed it with her.
Huh?
He discussed it with her.
Discussed, but she still got her way. And if you watch the movie, she's always gotten her way. It goes back. It gives you backstory, because when she didn't get her way and the panda came out, she was destructive. So it showed toxic behavior there. But obviously, as adults, we're looking at it different than a kid's gonna look at it, but genuinely take it down to the root of it. There is no balance to it. And yeah, what Sherelle was saying when the girl was like, I want to twerk, I'm gonna twerk. Fuck that. No, you're not.
There was a couple things in that regard that I didn't get to mention. So, like, for instance, in the movie, it says the word, it's a couple little, it says the word sexy. It talks about being sexual.
Oh no.
It says the word, it talks about strippers. Let me finish. It talks about strippers and that being okay to have a job as a stripper. It talks about, it mentions the word perv. So there's some sexual innuendos that's laced within the movie that I think can be problematic. I ain't say this, it's like to a point where a kid can't watch it. But if you are particular about, and you have a strong foot on what your kid watches, especially as a Christian parent, you may not want your kid to watch it. You may not.
Watch it with your kid.
Watch it before, watch it first, and then decide what's best for your child. That's what I think.
I watch it with her. And if I watch it and I go, nah, off. If I'm catching it, I'm like, no, off.
I'm willing to have the conversations though. I mean,
but I think that it's something like this is the time that you need to be in your kids'
Mhm.
Business.
Right.
heavy. So
For me, I'm
especially
not
whenever
about
you wanna
sheltering
raise them
and
how
then
you
them
wanna
having a
raise
culture
them.
shock later. I'll watch it with them. We'll discuss how to process this information
Right.
because this is the world they're in.
Well,
Not
that's a
gonna be
piece
like-
of it. A lot of parents aren't taking that time to talk about. They let them watch it because they don't want to shelter them, but then they're not talking to them either. So they're coming into it
That's
with
where they're failing at.
with mental with
Processing the
a
process.
child's perspective. Now, when I say a rebellious thing, I mean like, okay, like I said, the very first sentence in the movie is turn away from what your parents tell you to do and do what you want because you'll lose yourself if you follow your parents.
Well, we
That's the
all
running
know-
theme of the
Yeah.
movie.
well,
So
we
that's
all know that
that's-
this has been a thing since
We
we've
all
been-
Right,
experience
but
that shit.
I know, but let me finish, y'all. So that's the first line. Starts off right there. So of course she lies to her mom like a million times in this movie. She even goes as far as sneaking out to go to a concert. She's lying to her parents. So you know, if you are a parent who is strict about what your kids and what themes your kids watch, although you're not shocked by it, and we have seen it before, I'm coming from a movie review perspective. If
Yeah.
you don't want your kids watching them things, then that's okay. There's nothing
And
wrong
every
with you for
time-
thinking that because seeds are being planted, whether you believe they are or not. Grooming and seeds are being
Whether
planted.
you have a movie that tells you to or not,
Mhm.
it happens.
Mhm.
So
Nobody's saying it don't
with
happen.
this- right? So it's not the movies.
No,
the
we
TV
talking
shows.
about
It
grooming
happens anyway.
and seeds
It's not
being
even grooming.
planted.
You're right. Season like before there were movies that were like this, it was still happening. At
Yes.
least
Who
the
said it
first-
wasn't?
Yes, and I mean,
Well, what I'm saying, like you're saying, oh man, it's planting seeds.
well, no,
The kids are gonna do it regardless.
No,
Whether
that's
there's a
not.
movie
That's
about
not
it or
true.
not.
That's not true. Not all kids are going to do it regardless. And if you're
Not all
particular,
kids are gonna do it. Just 'cause-
you have a right as a
Right.
parent to be particular
Not
about what you
all
expose your
kids.
child to.
I'll
Not
say it
all
like this
kids are
too,
gonna
though.
do it because they saw Turning Red.
No,
I
ain't
wasn't
nobody saying
thinking
that.
about it,
Listen,
but I'm gonna
'cause,
do
I
it
mean,
now.
This movie's supposed to take place in the early 2000s. So for me, in the early 90s, I was doing that. I stuck out. I went to parties.
I ain't never sneak out. Never.
Oh, I
Where?
did. Oh,
What movie told you to do it?
I watched a lot of stuff.
I watched a lot of stuff.
Told
I'll
you
say
to
this.
do it,
I'll say
right?
this. I watched Porky's, which was wild at the time. I mean, you got to think early 90s. So I'm watching 80s movies, you know, Police Academy, Animal House.
Uh-huh.
So there's so many of these things where it's like fun to go out and sneak out and
Told you
hell,
to do
Weird
it.
Science. The movie Weird Science. They threw a house
Oh,
party.
Weird
I mean,
Science.
that was the thing. But I won't say that motivated me to sneak
But
out.
that was
It just-
art reflecting life. It wasn't
Right.
life reflecting art. Like
right. So, but I'll say, you know, before the movie issue, the problem with how everything's going down is societally we've been forced to work 2 and 3 jobs and our kids have been home. So for us, when we were kids, we could come home and our parents were around at least within an hour or so. And we would talk and they would see us or whatever. And if I watched something, I could have a conversation. You know, you had people, aunties, uncles, there were people around. Nowadays, there's no one around to teach kids. That's why kids, when they get depressed or get bullied, they do wild stuff because there's no one there talking them through, hey, it happens.
Okay.
Bullying.
no, think about this. Think about Romeo and Juliet. Think about the Iliad. So Romeo and Juliet were rebellious on their own. That wasn't influenced by some TV show.
So what are you saying? Are you saying that children can't be influenced by TV? Because we know that they
No,
can be.
what I'm saying is this. It's that human nature, when they hit that age, they're gonna do what they're gonna be rebellious regardless. Paris in the Iliad for Troy.
Not
Paris was
always.
Helena home anyway. It wasn't because he was influenced by something else.
But if you keep grooming and you keep allowing your children to just watch anything, those seeds can be planted. It's not a surefire that it just won't be.
It's about the discussion.
With time, if you
about
keep grooming,
processing.
it's a seed.
Ability.
You
It's
have
a
to
seed.
understand,
processing
like,
it. It's not about.
you
It's
have to
not about
understand,
the input.
I learned this.
It's about processing.
People all
the
grew
input.
up different. Everybody grew up different. So like I get where you're coming from with stuff like that, but there's also like situations like me and John were talking. John grew up where he could watch whatever he wanted on TV at any
Yeah,
age.
me too.
And it don't mean that every kid's gonna be crazy
that was
wild
cool.
because they did watch certain things.
Right. And my mom,
Right.
on the other hand, the Nazi queen, we were it had to be age appropriate. If you
That's
want
how I grew up.
PG-13, if you ain't 13, you ain't watching it.
I used to
So
watch
that's
Beavis
how
and
my mom
Butthead.
did it. She did not play either.
That wasn't
We
that
watched
bad though.
PG movies. That was it. And
What?
they sat and watched it with us. We were only allowed to watch
It
Disney
wasn't that bad.
Channel. That's it.
That's
We weren't
that's how I grew up as
we weren't
well.
allowed to watch anything additional. Like, I've listened to some kids talk about what they got to watch. My mom, and here's how serious it got. When Bring It On came out, y'all remember when Bring It On came out, right?
That
I was
controversial
not
movie.
allowed to watch that movie. I was not allowed to watch
Why
it.
not?
There were
can't even
girls
remember.
twerking in the movie, and they were being fast, and they had their bellies hanging out, and they were
Bellies?
gyrating. You ain't allowed to do that.
This is gonna show my age, but this is how much my parents didn't give a shit, and/or I guess I snuck and watched stuff I wasn't supposed to. But we had HBO. We were one of them privileged families back
Real
in the
sex.
early '90s.
Taxi
Real
Cab
Sex
Confessions.
12 and
You know
Taxi
what?
Cab Confessions on HBO, Showtime.
Never would have
Cinema.
happened at my house.
Never would have happened at mine either. And
I
it
wasn't
ain't
supposed to
gonna
have
happen
it.
with
I
my
had access
kids.
to
My mom
everything.
would have burnt the whole TV down.
The whole house down.
But see, I had access
Um,
to everything. But the thing about
what?
me is I was never afraid to ask questions either. If I saw a titty, I'm like, hey, I saw a titty. What's up with the titties? I'm liking them. And this is as
Right.
a straight
Processing.
male. I'm like, I
Processing
like that.
information.
It's a titty.
I can
I'm
tell you right
enjoying it.
now.
What's going on in the pants? You know what I mean?
Right.
Those are
Okay.
questions.
See,
Here's
That-
something.
That's relationship should happen because I can tell you there are dozens of examples. I have names, first and last names of people that I met in college that were sheltered,
Oh, I mean,
severely sheltered, and they got to college, had a culture shock.
yes.
They ended up either with STDs, pregnancies. They were having alcohol
B. Mike.
poisoning. They were
Cocaine
doing all
addiction.
this shit
D Mike.
because they never were exposed to anything
D Mike.
at all.
You
Racial
what we
issues.
just said, what we just said was what we just said was age appropriate.
Mhm.
So we did not say wait till college to tell them about sex. That's not what we said.
Oh,
We did. We also didn't say
Till.
tell them at 5 everything they need to know about sex.
Right.
But what's cool
We
about
did not
this
say. We
is-
didn't. Let me finish. We didn't say that. We didn't say have them go all the way off to college and you don't know nothing about the world. We're saying age appropriate content for a
Age
kid.
appropriate.
For a kid, not for a college adult.
Whenever you hit puberty, being
I got you. But what's
turning
cool
red.
about turning
Whenever
red?
you
Turning
whenever
red.
you
If you're
turn
6 years
you
old,
need to learn
watching
because
Turning Red,
you need to know
it's
now
just
if you
an
have
adventurous
sex,
movie.
a baby's coming.
Right.
If you are
So-
6 years old and watching Turning Red, it's an adventurous movie about some girl who can, she's a shapeshifter and turns into a panda.
I
If
gotta
you are
play
12,
devil's advocate
It's
though.
different.
But see, as the adults making the movie, we know the target audience that we're shooting for.
Exactly.
Watch the
So
Animaniacs.
hold on.
What about
Here's the
adult movie, like adult jokes
Listen,
that were involved.
There are a ton of adult jokes, but this
For
is
a
what I'm
time,
saying.
we wasn't allowed to watch that. My
But this
mom
is
was
what I'm saying.
particular about what we watched and when we watched it.
But I'm saying hold the adults in the room accountable. The adults are the ones making the product, right? So even with the Little Mermaid, when they put the dicks on the castle back in the day, those were adult men animating a movie and putting dicks on the castle.
They were
You know, and we
underpaid
didn't
and pissed
know-
off.
Huh?
They were underpaid and pissed off. So
They
they, said,
were.
"Fuck you,
So
Disney."
you think about this though. There's still a when you're storyboarding a thing, you know what joke you put in there, and yeah, you know it's gonna fly over the head to some people. But that's why, like Sherelle saying, as an adult, you're able to go, I don't want my kid exposed to that yet, because that's a conversation that they don't need to have just yet.
Just yet.
It's
That's it.
developing
You know what?
the stuff that you need when you need it. But this is why when we talked earlier about making these gender decisions, you're going younger and younger, and then you're putting other media in there to make other things also appropriate. Go ahead, Leash.
All right, Alicia, go
Let me
first.
ask you a question. So why is it okay for the world to make our kids, when it comes to our kids, like you don't learn how to multiply and divide when you're 2. You do it when you're age appropriate, when your mind is
They
developed
do in
enough to
China.
understand the concept, right? So why is it that they put this big thing on parents if they want to wait until their kids are age appropriate to introduce certain topics, and then it's an uproar when that parent don't want to? But meanwhile, school is based on age appropriateness.
Content.
Are they?
Yes,
Hear
it
what I say
is.
about no. Hear what I say about this. I am still dealing with now. In fact, I just had a whole thing a couple months ago, and maybe it might just be me. I'm
Probably
still
is, but go ahead.
frustrated. It probably is. I for real, it's definitely a me thing.
I'm just messing with you.
I am out loud saying it publicly. It is a me thing that I am still dealing with, being frustrated with the things that my parents did not share with me at a particular age. Because I have moments where I'm like, well, shit, if I knew that, then I wouldn't have did the thing I did. Why didn't you tell me earlier? And I'm also a person, my personality type or whatever, where I want to know everything as soon as possible. I want to be able to process it as soon as possible so I can get some sort of understanding and strategy ahead of time. And as much as that wasn't sheltered from me, because there was no restriction on media, whether it's music, movies, TV, whatever my dad was watching,
Do you mind
which was
sharing what it
everything.
is that you got upset that your parents didn't tell you?
Okay, we're gonna have
Yeah,
that
if
moment.
you don't feel comfortable, you don't have
No,
to.
no,
That's-
no. I can definitely do this. But it's a big moment for me. There was a situation where, when I was 5 years old, Drama Kenner, I remember this very vividly because I remember thinking there's a lot of details missing that my parents aren't sharing with me. My dad went to rehab when I was 5. And my parents did that thing of trying to sugarcoat it and, he's not here for weeks because of whatever. And I wanted them to tell me what the fuck is going on, my dad. Like, what's up? Like, yeah, he's there. He's sending me arts and crafts and rehab. I'm like, why isn't my dad at the house? Oh, what's going on? What's happening? And yes, that was between them. They didn't have to share it with me. I wish they would have. Are there other things at the time that I was comprehending? Because at the time when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, I was heavy because my mom. She made sure I was heavy into Black history. So I knew about the lynchings and the rapings and the struggles, and I was comprehending all of that. So for you not to share with me my father's journey with drug addiction, I was very frustrated beyond that with just talk to me about it. I'm ready. I'm here to accept this shit. I'm ready to go with it. And it wasn't until I was a teenager where they finally talked to me. I'm like, fucking thank you. Like, I was ready to do this before.
I have a question.
And sure, ask it.
In what way would you deem appropriate to bring that up to a 5-year-old?
For me, if I was a
A
person,
5-year-old to understand it, and
yes, a 5 word. Again, I cannot count myself in this because I, as Alicia just said, hey, I'm a little bit different with this thing. My approach to that is say, hey, your parent is going through something where they are having a bad time processing and restraining from something. Now, I may not use those such big words, but they are a situation they can't control themselves with this thing, and it's a very bad situation, and they are working on it. I didn't get that conversation. It
Would
was
you have?
don't
Do you
tell
think you would
Brandon.
have understood?
All right. Again,
Because I'm looking
it's
at. You said you were
difficult.
5.
I'm looking at
It
Audrey.
was.
I'm looking at my
I'm
5-year-old,
thinking of Audrey.
and I'm
Right.
thinking that,
And
and I'm
you're
looking
right.
at
You know
how
what?
I
But
would try to explain to her
uh-huh.
drug
But
addiction.
the attempt wasn't there though. It was shelter. It was keep them from this thing.
I probably would too. Now jail, I would tell them about jail.
But all right, so
No,
all right,
but listen,
something.
D-Mike,
Again,
so
I'm
But
being
I don't know how to
very
explain
vulnerable
rehab
here.
to a 5-year-old.
as a
I'm being
person
very
who,
vulnerable here with this, but I'm telling you right
Right.
now, at 7 years old, because my father was in the police database,
Mhm.
he was picked up for a crime because he fit the description. And that morning, as we were sitting down for breakfast, it was during the summertime. So he was with my mom's at work. He was with me. He's making grits. It was grits and eggs. And I'm like 7 years old. He's like grits and eggs. And it was my first time, well, my only time. I rode in a paddy wagon. Like they picked us up at my house because he fit the description of someone, because his criminal, his rap sheet, whatever what is there, his description was whoever was suspected of this. And I remember having to go to the police station, and to the point where here's how crazy the detail is. The detective that picked him up, that we rode in the paddy wagon with, he had bought his daughter a new bicycle, and it was sitting at the precinct, and it was red and white. And I remember this, where I'm riding in the back of the paddling with my father for this. Wasn't a lot of context with it. I knew I had to go with him because there was no one else at home, but they took me with him just to question him, even because he fit the description of it. Wasn't context. There wasn't explanation. It was sheltering this kid from this world versus explaining it to him as to this is what the reality of things are. And I wanted to know. I'm a curious ass person. Even now, I go down rabbit holes of research for random information so I can know until I die the extent of the world I'm in. And so I don't approach things where it's a sheltering thing. It's let's talk about it. Let's try to understand it.
I don't think every kid needs every piece of information. I think that's just my own personal. I think it should be based off of the personality of the kid and the immature level of the kid. And like, okay, this kid is curious. He can handle this kind of conversation at whatever level, and then I'm gonna bring it to. And then he's
so it's a case by case basis.
And then he's
fine.
And then he's also experienced. He's also experienced something. So now, like, I'm not gonna explain maybe drug rehab just because you mentioned it to a kid that's never ever experienced it and never said anything about it. Now that you're in it,
to refuse.
Wait. Now that you're
someone based on
but
age.
now that you're in it, and now I see where your mature level is. I see where your personality level is. I know how to approach whatever. Their approach was to say nothing.
Decision just based on age. Is it age appropriate? Fuck
But-
that. Is your kid able to handle this
I
information?
also have a question. Like, how many of us had grandparents around?
I did.
So we all had grandparents around for the most part.
Mostly, sort of.
And you've never heard the term stay in a child's place?
Oh, I've heard it. Did I listen to that? No.
Did you like it? Right.
But
You didn't like it because you felt like you could take that authority because you wanted to. Now,
I want to. I could take it on. Like, tell me. I don't want to just not know.
But listen, but this is the thing. You were choosing to overstep your boundaries as a developmental status as well. Just because you wanted to know doesn't mean you were capable of fully handling no.
I wasn't given the opportunity to.
But you don't. But here's the problem. You're a child. You don't have that option yet because you're a child. When you're an adult, you can make adult decisions. But as a child,
some adults suck at that too.
They do. But as adults in this situation, they have to navigate it as best they can. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hey, Alicia, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So as a person who does this line of work, we don't bring the kids into the situation unless the parent wants them to be. We don't say, hey, we need to sit down and have a conversation with your child about you being here. No, we don't do that. We leave it up to the parent to decide.
Right. 'Cause
Now,
that's their decision. And
right.
that's what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with the fact that my parents had their own lives apart or together beyond me. Right.
You're right.
And it's their decision to discuss their private lives with their child or not. So
Right.
that's the breakthrough I had in the past year because I was
Right.
angry about this shit. Like,
Right.
just tell
Because
me what
there's
the fuck
things
was
that you
going
have
on.
kept from your child. There's things that you've kept from your children. You don't tell your children you used to be out here just doing whatever. You would never tell your kid that. So
Age
there are
appropriate, I
certain
would.
things.
They
There's
also
a level
weren't.
of
They've never, from my observation, because again, it's my perspective. I can't perceive things for them. Anything that I am been aware of that they have perceived and been witness of, I try to make it a point to make sure I talk to them about it. And
understandable.
try to
but
tell
you're
versus
not out
telling
here.
them you're too young for this. You don't get to know. No, let's talk about it. You
But there's a point in time when you okay. So
There's timing
here's what
though.
I'm
Like you
trying
can't
to say.
throw all the
Wait,
things at them.
Wait, can I finish?
Oh, go ahead.
What I want to say is that like it's not that. It's that whenever you're 5 years old, you're impressionable. So the way that you look at your parents at 5, you look at them like, oh, and they don't
Yeah.
ever want that to be gone. They don't
That's
ever
not
want
real
that
though.
feeling.
They're-
I understand, but as a parent,
It's
you're
real
a
to
parent.
them.
As a parent, as a parent, I would never want my kid to look at me any different because of the mistakes that I made. I make mistakes, yes, and we will process that at a later date. But I'm not gonna take that innocence from you, that child innocence from you, because whenever, like you said, at 7 years old, whenever you had to go in that paddy wagon with your dad, you lost your innocence. Because why you can't, you're at that point, you are aware of what's going on around you instead of that's not your job to be aware. I, as the parent, am supposed to take that awareness for you because I'm the one navigating you to the point of getting you where you need to be. Whenever our minds don't process, if we want to get technical, let's get down to facts. Let's get down to the science of it. Your frontal lobe, your
not developed till you're like 25.
Exactly. You cannot make decisions. You cannot, there is no reasoning, rationale. There's no understanding. You cannot physically do it until your frontal lobe is closed.
Yeah.
Your frontal lobe does not close until you're 25 years old, give or take a few years because everybody, bone structure. We're getting technical here. But what I'm saying is that trying to understand, this is why they have, even society to a certain extent, if you're white, understands that to a certain extent, that's why the laws are made the way that they're made, is because, and why at certain age things are, you can do certain things, you can't do certain things because you're of the way that your mind develops. Mm-hmm. So at 5 years old, you haven't even touched water yet, baby. You're a baby.
Gotcha.
You're a baby.
And I want you to stay a baby for as long as
I understand that you wanted to, but at that point, your parents didn't want you to grow up faster than you had to grow up, because at that point, kids start internalizing things. So it's like, okay, if my dad's on drugs, is it because of me? What happened? What's going on? These are things that you should not be worried about at 5 years old.
They won't be worried about it, but you know what though? Instead, what ends up happening is I experienced this thing with no explanation at all.
You're
so
right.
I don't know about y'all, but for me as an overthinker, that is the worst thing you can do to me.
I get it.
But your parents
are allowed to have their lives without, like, I had to come to that realization with my parents when it came to their relationship and how fucked up it is. That relationship is all kinds of fucked up, but that's them over there. And I had to come to that. I had to come to that conclusion because I used to internalize it. I used to be like, what is wrong with y'all? Like, y'all, there's something wrong with y'all. Like, but I had to let that go and be like, you know what? That's not my problem. That's not for me.
And I had to process that too, though, but I felt it was kind of late though, because I didn't get an actual full picture of my dad until after his death, because he died in 2013, And then maybe 3 years ago, 3 years ago, I received a lot of information about his life. And it brought him to being very human for me, which was twofold. So I had a situation where, he's dad, like that's dad, like superhero, cool. And I lost that. But it was like he's human. And I related to that.
I think a lot of people
So
go through that though.
yeah. When you realize your parents are human versus being, at this pedestal superhuman level. Right.
This thing.
Yep.
But I would want, I don't know. I like a kid to remain a kid and remain innocent for as long as possible. And because once it's time to stress and worry about things, trust and believe it's a boatload of them to worry about, and you gonna have your feel. But as long as you can,
I got you. I know you're trying to.
You can play and not have to think about none of that stuff, and not have to take on adult issues. Now, if like you said, you went through.
Jarrell, wait a minute, because I see B Mike getting upset, and I want to just
not
say
upset about it.
I understand where you're coming from, and we're not harping at you. We're not trying to say that you were wrong for feeling the way that you felt. Nobody's saying that, that it shouldn't be that way. Like, but what we're trying to say is that there's levels to this. It's not just as it's not just as simple as
every person's
having
different.
that conversation.
Every person. They may, it might have been better for them to be sheltered and wait till later.
Well, here's the thing.
I'm still dealing with not being exposed early enough.
I can relate.
And I'm trying to be okay with my parents' decision because, I was a kid. I probably shouldn't know. It was their personal life. They don't have to share those things with me. Like, cool, fine. I'm still frustrated with some of it. I'm dealing with it. There's nothing I can do about it now. I'm 36.
See, this is what I'm saying. Like I can relate to your situation. My parents divorced when I was 5, and I'm fully aware. And honestly, medically, like stuff I deal with now, it's weird on the mental side because you always like to feel cool as being the first to be a thing or it be something. Well, I have an extraordinary memory, and I've done some therapy with it, and people are shocked that I can vividly remember as much as I do. So I do get what you're
some
saying.
Memories are very vivid, and
this is why I'm saying I can remember from 3 years old to earlier today, and I can tell you verbatim everything I've ever done. So, and I'm dead ass.
Awesome.
Dead ass. Because I've literally
I believe you.
I've had studies and tests done. It's real shit. It's fucked up. But I can remember the divorce. I can remember my dad coming to my grandma's house. I can remember the police being there. I remember everything. But a lot of ways that people think it shaped me, it didn't. I didn't give a shit. I knew it. I was aware. I knew my dad was a state trooper. I knew my dad was a part of the SWAT team. My dad was a cop. My dad also used to work at the steel mill. My dad's a carpenter. I know everything he's ever done. I never gave a shit. I still don't give a shit to this day. I very rarely talk to the dude. Yeah, I mean, my parents are both alive and kicking, and I could give a shit less. That's a whole different situation for me because I didn't need them to be superheroes. I was okay with them being human from a very young age. But I also was me at a very young age. I didn't need them to answer the questions. I sought out the answers myself. If you could read a book, you can get a damn answer. Yeah. So I immersed myself in knowledge. I love to learn. So that stuff never bothered me. When my brother went to jail, I remember him coming to my dad's house because I was there for the summer. And I remember the high-speed chase that he had. And I remember him flipping the Geo tracker and going to jail in the 90s. Like, I remember all of this. So to me, all right. It's just interlude. Right. She tried to play me off. It was jacked up. But
Wrap it up, Pete.
so I mean, I understand wanting to know. But I knew a lot of stuff early. You know, I knew it early too. I experienced it early. I was rebellious early. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Wilkinsburg and North Braddock. I was outside early. Yeah, I mean,
And I just said that I really appreciate you Black men sharing your pain.
Your vulnerability.
Yes,
We heart your vulnerability.
because we don't see that ever.
That
always
is
gotta
very
be
accurate.
hard.
It doesn't happen often.
Oh, it don't
We got
happen.
a lot more
Are we
pain
gonna
to
soak
share.
this in?
There's a lot more pain to share.
Are we soaking this in?
I mean, honestly, at this point though, we're too old to hide it. You know, these things happen. It is what it is, and you
It
process.
doesn't benefit us to hold it in.
Yeah, you just see where it could take you and how it can help other people also process and deal. But you know, the problem is that for so long, when men went through shit, no one cared. Yeah, I mean, and I think that's also why it's so easy for me to talk about it, because I'm used to people not caring anyway. So I just say it. It's like, here's
That.
information.
That's why
If you want it, I'll give it. Yeah, I
male
mean,
suicide
Bruh,
rates
I
are
didn't
much
mean
higher
to
than
cut
women.
you off. I just seen a vulnerable moment with B Mike, and I didn't want it to go
Yeah.
unnoticed.
You're just fine. I understand. It was necessary.
Hey, that's why I knew everything all the time.
right.
Now back to this Turning Red though.
It's an excellent movie. Show
Yeah,
all the
I like it.
kids.
A little all over the place in the sense of like, okay, first this panda is supposed to represent period and whatnot,
Right.
but then
Okay, this
towards
is
the middle and
continuity
end,
issue.
it doesn't. It's some other it's just a random
It
beast
is.
within, and it gets a little weird because there was a person who did a review on it, and she wrote like how it got weird because initially the panda's like supposed to represent your vagina or like the period.
Period.
Then now
Yeah.
she's at school selling it and taking.
Right. So wait, I said it was continuity.
Hey,
It was a continuity issue.
Yeah, I knew what you meant when you said that for that reason, because it took a flip, which for me, like
Right.
if you're gonna have a movie about periods for preteen youth, because I ain't gonna just say girls, for preteen youth, okay, that's cool, that's fine, that's needed. But then I don't like how it veered off into, which is
It
the
definitely did.
ongoing agenda trend that
Wait.
the media is trying to push,
I'll say,
coming out and
I'll
coming
say-
out with your inner beast.
well, wait.
Which one are we talking about here?
Hold on. I'll say this coming from a creative standpoint, and this is me taking a step back and looking at it. You assumed that the panda was only about the period and not puberty in general. So
No. The panda, her mom made it very clear.
Well,
She brought the pads and tampons for the panda.
no, her
And
mom.
then
no.
Why
look,
was she fighting
listen.
the panda at the end?
she
I'm
gave
sorry.
her another. She made her
That
change
was
in sheets,
period power,
Hold on.
Alicia.
Here's the thing that you
Period
weren't
power.
paying.
sheets and sleep on a
No.
different bed like girls have to do when they start their period.
No, that was only after the panda came out. Initially, the mom didn't realize that the panda had shown up. She thought it was just the period, but it represents puberty in general. So the beast side of it, think about how many females, once they started putting on makeup, was quote unquote selling themselves because you smelling yourself. You like, yeah, I'm cute now, I'm this, I'm that. It's that popularity contest too. It's not
Middle
just the
school, some
sexual
bullshit.
nature of it. It's everything that comes with that transition. That's why at the end, when she's twerking, I like to twerk, and she started backing her ass up. I was like, okay, that's a bit much, but I get it.
Turn it
because-
red for y'all.
because she's coming into that age where it's the age of discovery. You're gonna start getting hair in places. You're gonna start getting
Right.
mood swings.
The
You're gonna start
positive
getting all
things
this.
in the movie, like they
And
actually
you're also
talked about
gonna-
it.
Felt like it was a little all over the place in the way that they went about it. I just think so. I'm sorry.
Or
I get what you're saying, and that's all good, well and fine. But I think the way they went about it was
Continuity issues.
exactly. It was a continuity issue for me as well.
Hmm.
It's weird. It's like, okay, is this a
It definitely was.
I just thought it was about puberty. Period. I didn't just say the period and this is it. I looked at that monster as the whole transition from.
Why is it gotta be a
adolescence.
monster though? Like
He was a monster. He was a monster.
I said, why does it gotta be a monster?
Because she
though?
tore down the whole amphitheater.
Yeah.
Right. Is that how we really act when we get our
Yes.
period?
Yes, we do.
Yes, your monster.
No, you don't.
Yes, we
We tear the
do.
house down.
No,
I get
no.
crazy.
Look, you
Y'all are
need a
amazing
Snickers. You're not yourself when
individuals.
you're hungry.
What? All right, so we got another topic to hit, and we're gonna try to end by 10 o'clock tonight.
This topic might
All
go
right.
the whole length of the night.
No, we're not. It's gonna be quick. It's gonna be quick.